All right, how y'all doing today, everybody? This is your boy, the Wood Dog, and as you know, this is my segment, just keeping it real. Because, like I always say, keeping it real is the only thing that I know how to do, and I'ma definitely keep it real. You see what I'm saying? All right, let's just get into it. I'm going to discuss three things today. The first thing will be, once again, um, the Wayne County Sheriff Rafael Washington, his chief of jails Robert Dunlap, and his undersheriff Mike Jafer are up to the same old BS. Today is November 8th, 2023. Here we go. Um, If you go on the Channel 7 website today, after you watch this, there was a press conference given yesterday, finally, by the Wayne County Sheriff Rafael Washington concerning the death of an inmate that happened at the Wayne County Jail in downtown Detroit. Now, mind you, this is the second murder investigation in the last year and a half. Okay? But unlike the first murder that happened with deceased Corporal Bryant Searcy, who was a dear friend of mine and a loved deputy with the Sheriff's Department of over 20 years. Sheriff Benny Napoleon was the sheriff. That situation happened. Benny Napoleon got in front of it, scheduled a press conference with the media, updated the citizens on what was going on down there in his jail. Now, true enough, nobody can be in two places at the same time. Things happen. But Sheriff Benny Napoleon owned it. He ordered an investigation. He did more than one interview with the media to let people know what was going on. But this latest murder investigation that was done by investigative reporter Ross Jones from Channel 7 revealed a litany of blunders by Sheriff Rafael Washington and his staff. And when I say his staff, I'm talking about Rafael Washington, his chief of jails, Robert Dunlap, his undersheriff, Mike Jafer, and that sucking on a liquor bottle of an internal affairs captain, Reed Shackabarty, in internal affairs. Those four individuals be blocking all information that's supposed to be getting out to the public instead of owning anything. If you remember last week, investigator Ross Jones from Channel 7 showed up in the city of Dearborn, where Rafael Washington was obviously having a good time with his suit on, and questioned him about the death of the inmate in the jail. And he gets off the little podium wherever he was, addressing whoever he was in the city of Dearborn, and starts to walk away, damn near break out into a sprint. Ross Jones had to say, "Why are you running?" He says, "I'm not running." And then he has two or three officers with him, okay, like he's the president of the United States or like he's the governor of the state of Michigan. The mayor of the city of Detroit, Mike Duggan, doesn't walk around in the community with two or three officers with him. Who is out to get Rafael Washington? Nobody. He refuses to ask any questions, and he's been ducking and dodging the death of that inmate for the last 3 months. This entire story is on my Facebook page. You can look me up on Facebook under my real name, Frank Wood. But as you know, everybody calls me the Wood Dog. You dig? But you can go on my Facebook page under Frank Wood and update yourself on Rafael Washington and his crew and his blunders for the last 2 years or more. And you can go on Ross Jones' Facebook page and update yourself. And the former president of the Wayne County Deputy Sheriff's Association's Facebook page, Reginald Crawford. Okay. Now, during this press conference, they were trying to figure out how a psychotic and violent inmate was put in the cell with a meek and mild, weaker individual who was obviously outclassed by his adversary. Okay, so they instead of Sheriff Rafael Washington owning the situation, he wants to start deflecting at every turn, throwing the blame on the officers on the floor or officer, because you know it's supposed to be 5 officers on the floor downtown at the new jail, but instead it's only 3. So one officer has to go to another side to do rounds, and the other officer has to come over to the other side. We can get in all day about the officers' attitudes about doing rounds, because tell the truth be told, if they wanted to get on officers and discipline officers about rounds being done or not or missed, they would be writing officers up every day. They would be suspending officers every day. There ain't enough time in the day to do all them rounds that need to be done down there. And when you got an overwhelmed, over, it's so much overtime on them deputies down there, they don't know what to do. Overworked, overwhelmed, they're beat down. They try to come to work knowing that they're going to be ordered. They hope they got FMLA just so they can go home and get some sleep. And that's one of the reasons. Then in the jail division, you got rogue supervisors. It's only a few of them down there, but that's all it takes to kill the morale of the officers. Got rogue supervisors looking for every opportunity to pin stroke an officer and write them up for something. So what does that do for rounds? And then you got the sheriff going to do a press conference last night on Channel 7. I couldn't believe it. Where Rafael Washington was asked pertinent questions about the death of the inmate, and he pushes Robert Dunlap in front of the microphone. How can you be the head of an organization, Sheriff Rafael Washington, and you can't speak on the conditions in your jail, a department that you are and have been elected to run and supervise, and you can't speak on it? His undersheriff, Mike Jafer, didn't have a damn thing to say. You saw him on the TV standing in the back trying to stay out of the way. And Robert Dunlap, the jails are under his purview. He wants to be in charge of everything. He wants to be the deputy chief in charge of the officers at the court. But I guess they gave up on that situation because the officers' contract with that major hammer that the union have, which is their Article 17, that prohibits them from being farmed out, because the judges and the court facilities have to be supervised. And again, the officers can't be in 2 places at the same time. But to have the sheriff of Wayne County, Rafael Washington, not own anything that's going on in his jail with those 2 major murders in the last year and a half, you got those murder investigations are still ongoing, but yet he's at a Lions football game out of town, or he's hanging out in the city of Dearborn. Why is that? Because Rafael Washington wears a costume. Robert Dunlap wears a costume. His undersheriff, Mike Jafer, wears a costume. And what I mean by a costume, that police uniform that they're wearing. A person who wears a uniform is supposed to act the part, look the part, and be the part. You're supposed to eat, sleep, and drink that. And if you're not doing that, your uniform is a costume because you're not performing the duties that a law enforcement officer is supposed to perform. You're just putting on a costume with a badge on it, walking around wanting to be recognized as a law enforcement officer in this Great Lakes state of Michigan, and you're not performing your duties. You're everywhere else except in your office, downtown, at the sheriff headquarters, or at both of your jails and the courts downtown. Citizens of Wayne County, we elected a fool for Wayne County Sheriff. passing blame on one deputy, like his blunder in of itself was the responsibility that caused the inmate's death. Then they start throwing blame on the medical staff, the evaluators of inmates. Get this, there was a time when doctors, psychiatrists, and the nurses that worked in the Wayne County Jail were Wayne County employees. But as of 2015, 2016, that was removed with emergency manager powers. So that meant that the county had to farm out and contract medical services. So those people don't know the officers, they don't know the facility, they don't know the inmates, so things get missed. Unlike in days past, when the doctors, the nurses, and the psychiatrists were Wayne County employees and they had a vested interest in what went on down in that jail. But do you think that Sheriff Rafael Washington gives a damn? No, he don't, because at this very moment, there's 175 class action grievances against the Sheriff Rafael Washington, and each one of those class action grievances, if they're not worked out, they go to arbitration. And when the Sheriff Department loses those arbitrations, which he will, that costs the taxpayers a minimum of $6,000 per arbitration. And if there's 175 of them out there, myself and other Wayne County citizens like you are going to have to foot that bill for the blunders of the sheriff dissing the union and not being able to resolve union issues. I say, I just let them go to arbitration because I ain't giving them jack. That's his position. Now, how can you have the sheriff be out of town when all this stuff is going down? See it for yourself. Go on my Facebook page. It's there. Just look me up, Frank Wood, and go on Reginald Crawford's Facebook page. Update yourself. And go to the Channel 7 website and watch that BS of an interview last night, shedding blame everywhere instead of owning anything. And then on top of that, in closing, they do a press conference last night with Ross Jones from Channel 7. We really didn't get no answers, but he drags his entire command staff to a press conference and they didn't have anything to say. He didn't even defer any questions to them. Why? Because they know the truth. His commanders, his lieutenants, his sergeants, and some of his one-star deputy chiefs, they know the real deal, but he don't want them to say anything. The only way they'll end up saying anything is if they get deposed. But he has so many words, he's throwing them under the bus too, just so he can wear that costume. But in closing on Rafael Washington for a moment, he has to run for sheriff next year in 2024. So I'm going to be regurgitating a lot of stuff that you see on my Facebook page. And take some time out and go through my Facebook page, and every issue on Rafael Washington and his administration is right there for you to see and tap and listen to those news reports by myself, Ross Jones, and former Deputy Sheriff President Reginald Crawford. We need a new sheriff in this town, and it's definitely not Rafael Washington. All right, moving on. The second issue, and it's going to be brief because there really is nothing to harp on it. It's the LGBTQ community. Okay, as you know, in the city of Hamtramck, there's a current lawsuit filed against the city of Hamtramck about them not allowing the LGBTQ flag to be flown on public property. Now, you can put them in your windows, you can put them on your car, you can put them on your private business if you want to, but the city is saying that they can't do that. Well, as you know, Hamtramck has been, pretty much is dominated by Middle Eastern people, Palestinians, Bangladesh, and stuff like that. And you'll notice that every elected office in the city of Hamtramck is held by one of those ethnic groups. And, from where they're from and the way that they were raised and taught, they don't acknowledge LGBTQ community people. They don't have any respect for them. Just the way that their culture is, they don't recognize them, you know. But people like myself and people who are born and raised in this country, we have an understanding of the LGBTQ community. And if there is people out there that have a problem with the LGBTQ community, you a fool. And I'm going to tell you why you're a fool. Because if you have a hate or disdain for people from that community, be very careful, because all you have to do is shake your own family tree and see what falls out. You know, do I have friends that are gay? Yes. Um, do have I worked with people who are gay? Yes. Do I interact with people to this day who are gay? Yes. What am I going to do to stop it? Nothing. But what I do have is respect for them, because they're going to stand up for their lifestyle choice. And it's not for me to rule in any direction on how they choose to live their lives. And I would caution everyone else, if you got a problem with the LGBTQ community, you're wasting energy. They're not going anywhere. They're going to be here, and that's it. So deal with it. You don't know uh, a person who's a part of the LGBTQ community unless they tell you, or you might see they're openly about it um, on social media, and stuff like that. But why is it your concern about who somebody loves and who they don't love? It's not none of my business, and it's not none of your business either. So save your energy for something that you can really do something about. All right. Now, I'm going to get into one last thing. Um, and it does concern the Wayne County Sheriff's Department as it pertains to Rafael Washington, but it was more or less, I'm going to give you a synopsis on how I was attacked personally by Sheriff Rafael Washington and his former undersheriff, Daniel Fannis, and his current chief of jails that we saw blundering and stumbling all over during that press conference last night with Ross Jones, Robert Dunlap. The first time that I was messed with Raphael Washington and moved around against my seniority bidded rights I was assigned to the Lincoln Hall of Justice. Um, People coming in there tearing up. You got to put people out. People file complaints. But the biggest one, when I was assigned to the Penobscot building at the front of the court, they had a rogue referee over there named Anita Scott Meisel. She was an idiot. Child support matters, custody matters, and she would go off on people who didn't have attorneys. And that's another issue that I'll discuss later. But if you went to the front of the court and you was in front of one of them referees without an attorney, they knew you didn't have legal representation. They would go off on you and order unfair monetary judgments against the non-custodial parent. And this particular referee named Anita Scott Meisel, she treated men with so much respect, and women too who had to pay child support. But if you had an attorney, she treated you a lot differently, you know. And then when things didn't go right in a hearing where sometimes both sides didn't have an attorney, she'd go off on them. And then when people snapped back, she would push the emergency buttons and cause all the officers to run up to her courtroom over and over and over. And one day I just spoke on it. I said, this referee needs to be put in check, you know, and and I let her know that, she was trying to order me to seize people's driver's licenses, which is illegal. You know, you can't be taking stuff from people without probable cause. Want me to detain people just because they had an opinion on what she was ruling on. That's why you in court, to have your say. I say we can't do that. We don't give adults a timeout. They either under arrest or they not. You, you know. But when I spoke on it, Raphael Washington, this referee complains, and Raphael Washington and his chief, David Robert, well, let's just move him out of here to the jail division. No hearing, no disciplinary paperwork, no nothing. Just move me out of there. It took Benny Napoleon to listen to the union and realize that I was doing my job, and he sent me back to my union bidded position. Now, the last thing was what happened. Now, this is a big one. It was maybe 2 or 3 months before I retired in 2022. I was working at the Coleman Young Center, and I was the union representative for all those deputies assigned to the Coleman Young Center. I was talking to a few of my partners about the upcoming sheriff election of 2022, and we were just talking about how things was going, who we were supporting, and everything. And I guess somebody who was working in this particular office was loyal to Raphael Washington, Miss Tori Henson. And she wants to get on the phone. Yeah, he's over here talking about you, Sheriff. He's saying this and saying that because Raphael Washington had got the appointment to sheriff right after being Napoleon died for COVID. She said everything that I didn't say to him, and he just went with it. And again, transferred me to the jail division with no disciplinary paperwork, no conduct incident report, no hearing, no nothing. Just did it. And why did they do it like that? Because they knew they was wrong. Okay. Now let me fast forward. I went to the jail. I knew I was retiring, so I retired in good standing. Okay. And when you retire in good standing, you get a retirement badge, a police retirement ID, and you get to allowed to purchase your service weapon if you retire in good standing, which I got all three. Now, after being retired a year, I decided I wanted to go back into law enforcement. So what I did was I applied for the Detroit Transit Police. And they were impressed with my 31 year career. I did my psychological, passed that, 2 psychological evaluations, mind you. They checked everything they had to go check about me. And those interviewers, the detectives, they had naturally had to go to the sheriff's department to inquire and see what kind of officer I was. Well, when they went over to the sheriff's department to make the inquiry, Captain Reed Shackabarty and Lacey Polderdyke, she's a sergeant, and from what I hear, those two might be entangled with each other. They had nothing but bad things to say about me, but they didn't have anything to say about me that was illegal or criminal. Only thing they could say, well, Frank Wood was this, Frank Wood was that, Corporal Wood did this, Corporal Wood did that, but didn't provide any paperwork, no documentation to verify what they were saying was negative about me. But did that stop the Detroit Transit Police Department from hiring me? No, because I was an officer in good standing and retired in good standing from the Wayne County Sheriff, and I was ultimately hired by the Detroit Transit Police. Because the investigators from the Transit Police, I already told them what was going on politically. They were just mad at me and upset with me because I was working on the Walter Epps campaign team that was working to unseat Raphael Washington. And that's why Washington was doing all that stuff to me before I retired, because he knew I was on Walter Epps' campaign team. But I want to personally thank the police chief of the Detroit Transit Police, Mr. Brown, and the 2 investigators, Mr. Blade over there. That's his street name. I'm not going to use his real name. But they asked the sheriff, they asked Reed Shackabarty and his sergeant, and they ultimately went and talked to a couple chiefs. They asked them 4 pregnant questions since they had all this stuff to say about me, trying to stop me and mess me up from trying to get hired by the Detroit Transit Police, but it didn't work. They asked him 4 specific things. Number 1, has he ever been engaged in domestic violence anytime during his career? The answer was no. The second thing that they asked Internal Affairs and the chiefs about me, former retired corporal from the Sheriff's Department, was he involved in any criminal activity or any criminal acts prior to his retirement? That answer was no. The third thing that Detroit Transit investigators wanted to know was, has he ever failed a drug test during his entire career as a deputy sheriff in Wayne County? The answer was no. And the fourth one, which is the most profound question that they asked, was, is his name currently on the Giglio list? The answer is no. And if you don't know what the Giglio list is I'll give you, I have it written down as GIGLIO. That's a list that's compiled by every prosecutor's office in this nation of officers who are not credible to testify in court. The officer is a liar, has lied, or has bad integrity, and their testimony cannot be accepted by any court. You look that up, and there's a detailed definition on the Giglio list, GIGLIO. My name was not on that list. And I've testified in many court cases, and I've always told the truth. I'll tell anybody, I've lost cases because I told the truth. And the reason why I'm telling you this is because that's how dirty and low down that Sheriff Rafael Washington is, and his Internal Affairs Captain Reed Shackerbarty is, and that lying Sergeant Lacey Poderdike is. They tried to say everything they could to keep me from being hired by the Detroit Transit Police, but it didn't work. I was suited and booted and sworn in again to be a law enforcement officer in this Great Lakes state of Michigan. And my MCOL status is retired in good standing because they tried to revoke it when they found out that I was working on Walter Epps's campaign. And MCOLs indicated that just because I didn't want to talk to them on my last day of work with the Sheriff's Department about working on their opponent's campaign was not a reason for me not to be in good standing retired through MCOLS, which is the Michigan Council on Law Enforcement Standard in the state of Michigan. And I am no longer employed by the Detroit Transit Police because I resigned after about 4 months because I had some serious duties I had to take care of with my father. My father he had a stroke about 5 years ago, and he needed his only son, oldest son, to look after him, and that's what I'm doing. That's why I had to resign. But the Transit Police, I want to thank them for looking through all the BS and swearing me in and getting me back on the job and making me whole. And so you didn't stop me, Rafael Washington. And Lacey Poderdike and Reed Shackerbarty of the Wayne County Sheriff's Internal Affairs, you didn't stop me. Good luck. But they gave me more respect at the transit unit, transit police than I ever got with the Wayne County Sheriff's Department. And there's a lieutenant over there. His name is Edward Arnold. Man, I love that man. And if anybody looking to go over to the Detroit Transit Police, they're hiring as we speak. And Lieutenant Edward Arnold is one hell of a guy. And so are the sergeants and the lieutenants and the police chief of Detroit Transit Police. Big respect from the Wood Dog. And this is my segment, Just Keeping It Real. Because like I said, just keeping it real is the only thing that I know how to do. I know this video was a little long, but I want you all to make sure that you like and subscribe to my channel for future content. And with that, the Wood Dog is out. And I just want to Thank everyone again for signing on and not feeding into the BS. Thank you very much, everybody.